Victoria Sterling dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the marble floor, but she didn't hear it. She didn't hear anything except the impossible sound coming from her daughter's room. "Daddy?" Her twin girls, born paralyzed, diagnosed mute silent for 5 years, were speaking, and they were calling the black janitor their father. Victoria's hands trembled. She had spent $4 million on specialists. Every doctor at Emory said her daughters would never talk. Yet here was Marcus Thompson, a man who cleaned toilets for $12 an hour, doing what modern medicine could not. What she discovered next about this janitor would shatter everything she believed about love healing and what it truly means to be a parent. Comment below which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The word hung in the air like something holy. Victoria Sterling stood frozen in the doorway of the playroom, her body refusing to move, her mind refusing to process what her ears had just delivered. Her Hermes bag slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a soft thud, but she didn't notice. She couldn't notice anything except the scene unfolding before her. Her daughters, Lily and Rose, sat on the plush carpet in their specialized support chairs. Their small bodies, twisted by the cerebral palsy that had claimed them at birth, were leaning forward. Their eyes, usually distant and unfocused, were locked onto the man kneeling before them. Marcus Thompson, the janitor. A black man in his early 40s, wearing a faded Navy uniform, with patches on both elbows. His work gloves were still on his hands, but his arms were stretched out toward the girls like he was welcoming them home. "Daddy," Rose said again. The word was weak, broken barely more than a whisper, but it was unmistakably a word. Victoria's knees nearly buckled. For 5 years, she had lived in silence. For 5 years, the best neurologists in Atlanta had told her that her daughter's brains couldn't process language. For 5 years, she had accepted that she would never hear their voices. And now this. Marcus hadn't seen her yet. His eyes were soft, filled with something Victoria couldn't name. He spoke gently, his deep voice barely above a murmur. "That's right, sweetheart. Say it again. You can do it." Lily's lips moved. Her tiny face scrunched with effort. And then, "Da-dee." Victoria pressed her hand against the doorframe to keep from falling. Her throat burned. Her chest felt like someone had reached inside and squeezed her heart with both hands. Her daughters were speaking, and they were calling the janitor Daddy. Not Mommy. Not her name. Not any of the words the speech therapists had tried to drill into them for years. Daddy. Victoria stepped back slowly, carefully, before anyone could see her. She retreated down the hallway, her Louboutin heels silent against the marble. Her reflection passed in the ornate mirrors that lined the walls. A woman of 42, perfectly composed, perfectly dressed, perfectly hollow. She made it to her office before her legs gave out. She collapsed into her leather chair, staring at nothing. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the mahogany desk, trying to steady herself, but the trembling wouldn't stop. "How?" she whispered to the empty room. "How is this possible?" Victoria Sterling was not a woman who believed in miracles. She was a woman who believed in data, in research, in the power of money to solve problems. She had built Sterling Pharmaceuticals from a small lab in her garage into a $3 billion empire. She had done it through intelligence, determination, and an absolute refusal to accept failure. When her daughters were diagnosed at 6 months old, she had applied the same approach. She flew in specialists from Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic. She hired a team of speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists. She installed a state-of-the-art medical suite in the east wing of her mansion. She spent $4 million in 5 years, and she would have spent $40 million more if anyone could have given her hope. But no one could. Severe motor impairment, the report said. Nonverbal. Limited cognitive response. Prognosis permanent. She had read those words so many times that they were burned into her memory. She had accepted them. She had built her life around them. And now a janitor, a man who made less in a year than she spent on wine, had accomplished what the entire medical establishment could not. Victoria pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. This didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. She reached for her phone and dialed Jennifer Hale, the head nurse. Mrs. Sterling. Jennifer answered on the second ring. Come to my office, now. 3 minutes later, Jennifer appeared in the doorway. She was a competent woman in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a practical bun. She had worked for Victoria for 4 years, and she knew better than to ask questions when her employer used that tone. Close the door, Victoria said. Jennifer obeyed. Sit down. Jennifer sat. Victoria leaned forward, her green eyes sharp as surgical steel. Tell me about Marcus Thompson. Jennifer blinked. The janitor. Yes, the janitor. Tell me everything. Jennifer shifted in her seat. He started 3 weeks ago. The staffing agency sent him. His references were excellent. He worked at Grady Memorial for 6 years, then at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta for 4 more. Very reliable. Very quiet. Keeps to himself. And with my daughters, Jennifer hesitated. Jennifer. The girls respond to him, Jennifer said slowly. I noticed it in the first week. When he's cleaning near their room, they calm down. They watch him. They follow his voice. She paused. I mentioned it in my weekly report, Mrs. Sterling. I assumed you read it. Victoria hadn't read it. She barely read the reports anymore. They were always the same. No change. Status stable. Recommend continued therapy. What does he do with them? He talks to them, reads to them sometimes during his breaks, sings to them. Jennifer's voice softened. He treats them like they understand every word. And the doctors, what do they say? Dr. Patterson thinks it's coincidence. Dr. Okafor says the girls are probably just responding to the tone of his voice, not the words. Jennifer looked down at her hands. But I've worked with those girls for 4 years, Mrs. Sterling. I've never seen them respond to anyone the way they respond to him. Victoria was silent for a long moment. Today, she said finally, in the playroom, did you hear anything unusual? Jennifer's eyes widened. Unusual? Did you hear them speak? The blood drained from Jennifer's face. Speak, Mrs. Sterling, the girls can't. I heard them, Jennifer. I stood in that doorway and I heard my daughters say Daddy. Both of them. Clear as day. Jennifer stared at her. You're certain? I know what I heard. Jennifer pressed a hand to her chest. My God. I want to know everything about Marcus Thompson, Victoria said. Where he's from, where he lives, whether he has family, what he does when he's not here. Everything. Mrs. Sterling, if the girls are actually speaking, shouldn't we call Dr. Patterson, run some tests? Not yet. Victoria's voice was hard. First, I need to understand what's happening. I need to understand how a janitor did in 3 weeks what 10 years of medical science couldn't do. Jennifer nodded slowly. I'll get you everything I can find. Good. And Jennifer? Yes. Not a word of this to anyone, not the staff, not the doctors, no one. Of course, Mrs. Sterling. After Jennifer left, Victoria sat alone in the gathering darkness. She didn't turn on the lights. She didn't move. She just sat there, listening to the echo of that impossible word. Daddy. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She lay in her enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over in her mind. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus kneeling on that carpet, his arms open, his voice soft. She saw her daughters leaning toward him, like flowers turning toward the sun. And she heard that word, Daddy. The pain of it was almost physical. A sharp, twisting ache deep in her chest. David had been dead for nearly 5 years. He had been on a business trip to Chicago when his plane went down. The girls were 3 months old. They never knew their father's voice, never felt his arms around them, never saw his smile. Victoria had tried to fill that void. She had tried so hard. She had held them, rocked them, sang to them in those early months. But as the diagnoses piled up, as the specialists delivered their verdicts one after another, something inside her had started to close. She couldn't save them. She couldn't fix them. And every time she looked at their still faces, their silent mouths, she saw her own failure staring back at her. So she had done what she always did when faced with a problem she couldn't solve. She delegated. She hired the best people. She created systems and schedules and protocols. She turned the mansion into a medical facility and treated her daughter's care like a business operation. It was easier that way. Cleaner. Less painful. But now, lying in the darkness, Victoria realized something terrible. She had been running. For 5 years she had been running from her own children, hiding behind doctors and nurses and therapists, hiding behind money. And while she was running, Marcus Thompson had simply shown up. He talked to them. He read to them. He sang to them. He treated them like they understood every word. Victoria turned onto her side, pulling the silk sheets around her shoulders. Her eyes burned, but she wouldn't let herself cry. She hadn't cried since David's funeral. She wasn't going to start now. The next morning, Victoria was in the hallway outside the playroom at 7:00 a.m. She hadn't planned it. She had told herself she was just going to check on the girls the way she did every morning. A quick look, a brief hello, then off to her office to start the day. But when she reached the door, she stopped. Marcus was already inside. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor, the girls in their chairs in front of him. He had a picture book open in his lap, and he was reading aloud, his deep voice, slow and patient. And then the little rabbit said, "I don't know how to find my way home." But the wise owl looked down and said, "Home isn't a place, little one. Home is wherever someone loves you." Marcus looked up at Lily. "What do you think about that, sweetheart? Do you think the owl is right?" Lily's eyes were fixed on his face. Her lips moved slightly, though no sound came out. "That's okay," Marcus said gently. "You don't have to talk. You can just listen. I'm not going anywhere." Victoria's throat tightened. She had never spoken to her daughters like that. She had never sat on the floor with them, never read them stories, never told them she wasn't going anywhere. She had always been going somewhere, always busy, always distracted, always running. Marcus turned the page and continued reading. His voice was warm, unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world, as if there was nowhere else he would rather be. Rose made a small sound, not a word, just a soft vocalization. Marcus stopped reading immediately. "What is it, sweetheart? You want to say something?" Rose's face scrunched with effort. Her lips trembled. "Take your time," Marcus said. "I'm listening." And then so quietly that Victoria almost missed it. "More." Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus smiled, his whole face lighting up. "You want more of the story?" Rose nodded, a tiny movement, barely perceptible, but unmistakably a nod. "Then more is what you'll get," Marcus said. He turned the page and kept reading. Victoria backed away from the door. Her legs carried her down the hallway, down the stairs, through the foyer, and out the front door. She stood on the portico, gasping for air, her hands pressed against her chest. Her daughters were speaking. Not full sentences, not conversations, but sounds, words, communication. After 5 years of silence, they were finally reaching out. And they were reaching for Marcus Thompson. Not for her, for him. Victoria closed her eyes and let the morning air wash over her. Birds sang in the magnolia trees. The fountain in the circular driveway splashed softly. The world continued on, oblivious to the earthquake happening inside her heart. She had a choice to make. She could be jealous. She could be resentful. She could fire Marcus and pretend this had never happened. Or she could do what she should have done 5 years ago. She could stop running. Victoria opened her eyes. She straightened her shoulders. She walked back into the house. She had spent $4 million trying to fix her daughters from the outside. Maybe it was time to try something different. Maybe it was time to learn from a man who fixed things from the inside. That afternoon, Victoria called Marcus to her office. He arrived still in his uniform, his work gloves tucked into his back pocket. He stood just inside the doorway, his posture respectful, but not servile. His dark eyes met hers steadily. "You wanted to see me, Mrs. Sterling." "Sit down, please." He hesitated, then sat in the chair across from her desk. Victoria studied him for a long moment. He was not a handsome man in the conventional sense. His face was weathered, lined with the marks of hard years. His hands were calloused, his nails trimmed short and clean. But there was something in his expression, a quietness, a stillness that reminded her of David. David had never been flashy either. He had been steady, reliable, present. "I saw what happened yesterday," Victoria said. "In the playroom." Marcus nodded slowly. "I thought you might have." "I heard my daughters speak, for the first time in their lives." "Yes, ma'am." Victoria leaned forward. "How did you do it?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "I didn't do anything, Mrs. Sterling. Not really. I just talked to them. Treated them like they could understand me." He paused. "I think sometimes when people can't talk back, we stop talking to them. We start talking about them or around them, but not to them. They become invisible." "And you didn't do that?" "No, ma'am. I talked to them like they were right there. Because they were." Victoria felt something crack inside her. A wall she had built so carefully, so deliberately, was starting to crumble. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you care? They're not your children. They're not your responsibility." Marcus looked down at his hands. For a long moment, he didn't answer. "I have a daughter," he said finally. "Her name is Jasmine. She's 5 years old, same age as your girls." Victoria waited. "She has cerebral palsy too, same kind. Can't walk, can't talk, can't feed herself." His voice was steady, but Victoria could hear the pain beneath it. "Her mother left when Jasmine was 2. Said she couldn't handle it. So it's just been me and Jasmine ever since." Victoria's chest tightened. "I know what it's like," Marcus continued, "to look at your child and wonder if they can hear you. To talk to them every day and never know if anything is getting through." He looked up, meeting Victoria's eyes. "But I kept talking anyway. Because even if she couldn't answer, she could feel it. She could feel that someone was there. Someone who wasn't going to give up on her." Victoria couldn't speak. "When I saw your girls," Marcus said, "I saw Jasmine. I saw 2 little kids who had been poked and prodded and tested, who had doctors talking about them like they weren't even in the room. And I thought maybe they just need someone to see them. Really see them. And you saw them. I tried to, ma'am. I'm still trying." Victoria stood up and walked to the window. The afternoon sun was streaming through the glass, casting long shadows across the Persian rug. She could see the gardens below the roses David had planted the summer before he died. "I want to offer you something," she said, not turning around. "Ma'am, I want you to move into the estate, you and Jasmine. There's a guest wing on the west side of the house, 3 bedrooms, a sitting room, a private kitchen. You can live there rent-free." She heard Marcus shift in his chair. "I'll double your salary," she continued. "And Jasmine will have access to all the medical care we provide here. The nurses, the therapists, the equipment. Everything." Silence. Victoria turned around. Marcus was staring at her, his expression unreadable. "Why?" he asked. "Because my daughters need you. Because whatever you're doing, it's working. And because—" Her voice caught. She forced herself to continue. "Because I think I need to learn from you." Marcus shook his head slowly. "Mrs. Sterling, I appreciate the offer. I really do. But I can't accept it." Victoria blinked. "Why not?" "Because it feels like charity, and I've got too much pride for charity." "It's not charity. It's a business arrangement. You help me with my daughters. I help you with Jasmine. It's still not right. Marcus stood up. I don't want your money, Mrs. Sterling. I don't want your big house or your fancy doctors. I just want to help two little girls who remind me of my own. Victoria stepped toward him. Then help them. Move in here and help them every day, not as an employee, as part of this household, as part of this family. Marcus went still. Family. I don't know what else to call it, Victoria said. I don't know what we are, but I know that my daughters are speaking for the first time in their lives, and it's because of you. I know that you have a little girl who needs the same kind of care my girls get, and I know that... She stopped, struggling to find the words. I know that this house has been empty for 5 years, really empty, and maybe it doesn't have to be. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Victoria could see the war playing out behind his eyes. Pride against need, independence against opportunity, fear against hope. Finally, he spoke. I need to think about it. Talk to Jasmine. Of course. She's only 5, but I tell her everything. She deserves to have a say in where we live. Victoria nodded. Take all the time you need. Marcus turned toward the door, then stopped. He looked back at her, and for the first time, Victoria saw something like warmth in his eyes. You know, Mrs. Sterling, your girls are special. Not because of what they can or can't do. Just because of who they are. You're lucky to have them. I know, Victoria whispered. But as Marcus left the office, she realized that she hadn't known. Not really, not until now. She had been so focused on what her daughters couldn't do that she had forgotten to see who they were. A janitor had seen it. A man with nothing had seen what a woman with everything had missed. Victoria sank into her chair and finally let the tears come. That night, alone in the darkness of her bedroom, Victoria made a decision. Whatever it took, however long it took, she was going to learn. She was going to learn how to see her daughters the way Marcus saw them. She was going to learn how to be their mother again. And maybe, just maybe, she was going to learn what it meant to build a family from scratch, not from blood, but from love. She didn't know yet that the road ahead would be harder than anything she had ever faced. She didn't know about the storm that was coming, or the secrets Marcus carried, or the moment when everything would nearly fall apart. She only knew that something had changed, and there was no going back. 3 days passed, and Marcus didn't give Victoria an answer. She watched him from a distance, studying him the way she studied financial reports, looking for patterns, inconsistencies, anything that might explain who this man really was. Every morning, he arrived at 7 sharp. Every afternoon, he spent his lunch break in the playroom with Lily and Rose. Every evening, he left at 5, climbing into his rusted Honda Civic and disappearing down the long driveway. Victoria told herself she was being cautious. Responsible. A woman in her position couldn't just invite a stranger into her home without knowing everything about him. But the truth was simpler and harder to admit. She was afraid. Afraid that if she learned too much, she would find a reason to distrust him. Afraid that this miracle, this impossible, inexplicable miracle, would turn out to be a lie. Afraid that hope, once allowed in, would destroy her all over again. On the 4th day, Jennifer delivered a manila folder to Victoria's office. Everything I could find, Jennifer said. Employment history, background check, personal references. It's all there. Victoria took the folder. It felt heavier than it should have. Thank you, Jennifer. Mrs. Sterling. Jennifer hesitated at the door. I've worked in healthcare for 30 years. I've seen a lot of things I couldn't explain. But what's happening with those girls? She shook her head. I don't know what Marcus Thompson is doing. But whatever it is, it's real. I've watched them. They're different when he's around. More present. More alive. I know, Victoria said quietly. After Jennifer left, Victoria sat with the folder unopened in front of her for a long time. The afternoon sun moved across the room, casting shifting patterns on the walls. Finally, she opened it. The first page was a summary. Marcus Darnell Thompson. Born October 15, 1982, in Macon, Georgia. Parents deceased. No siblings. Graduated from Macon County High School in 2000. Enlisted in the Army 2 weeks after graduation. Served 8 years, including 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. Honorably discharged in 2008 with the rank of Staff Sergeant. Awarded a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. Victoria paused. A Bronze Star. She hadn't expected that. She kept reading. After leaving the Army, Marcus had worked a series of jobs. Construction, warehouse work, security. Nothing that lasted more than a year or two. In 2015, he married a woman named Keisha Williams. In 2019, their daughter Jasmine was born. In 2021, Keisha filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. She was awarded no custody, she had requested none. Victoria's jaw tightened. The next section detailed Marcus's employment in healthcare settings. He had started at Grady Memorial in 2019, working as a janitor in the pediatric ward. His supervisor's notes were glowing. Mr. Thompson has an exceptional rapport with our young patients. He frequently volunteers to assist nursing staff during breaks. Several parents have specifically requested that he be assigned to their children's rooms. He had left Grady in 2021 to take a position at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, the same hospital where Victoria had taken Lily and Rose for their early evaluations. His records there were similar. Outstanding employee. Beloved by patients and families. Highly recommended. Victoria turned to the next page and found the background check. No criminal record, no lawsuits, no complaints of any kind. The man was by every measurable standard exactly what he appeared to be, a hard-working single father doing his best to raise a disabled child on a janitor's salary. But it was the last document in the folder that stopped Victoria cold. It was a medical summary, the same kind she had seen hundreds of times for her own daughters. Jasmine Marie Thompson, born April 3, 2019. Diagnosis: spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. Prognosis: non-ambulatory, non-verbal, requiring full-time care. Attached was a photograph. Victoria stared at it for a long time. Jasmine was a beautiful child. She had her father's dark eyes and her mother's delicate features. She was sitting in a pink wheelchair wearing a yellow sundress with butterflies on it. Her head was tilted slightly to one side, her mouth curved in a crooked smile. She looked exactly like Lily and Rose. Victoria closed the folder. She sat in the silence of her office, feeling the weight of everything she had just learned pressing down on her chest. Marcus Thompson wasn't just a janitor who happened to be good with disabled children. He was a father, a veteran, a man who had served his country, built a life, lost his wife, and kept going anyway, all while caring for a daughter who would never walk, never talk, never live independently. He understood Lily and Rose because he understood Jasmine. He loved them because loving broken children was the only way he knew how to live. Victoria stood up abruptly. She grabbed her car keys from the drawer and walked out of the office without telling anyone where she was going. She needed to see it for herself. The drive to East Point took 45 minutes in afternoon traffic. Victoria's Tesla glided through neighborhoods that grew progressively more worn as she traveled south, chain-link fences, replacing wrought iron convenience stores, replacing boutiques, potholes multiplying in the cracked asphalt. Marcus's address led her to a 3-story apartment building that looked like it had been built in the 1970s and hadn't been updated since. The paint was peeling. The parking lot was full of cars that had seen better decades. A group of teenagers sat on the steps, watching her Tesla with undisguised curiosity. Victoria parked across the street and turned off the engine. She didn't know why she was here. She didn't know what she expected to see. She only knew that she couldn't make this decision, couldn't change her life and her daughter's lives based on words in a folder. She needed to see Marcus Thompson in his own world, not in hers. She waited. At 5:47 p.m., the rusted Honda Civic pulled into the parking lot. Marcus got out still in his work uniform. He walked around to the trunk, pulled out a bag of groceries, and headed toward the building. He didn't notice her. Victoria watched him climb the exterior stairs to the second floor. He stopped at Unit 2B, unlocked the door, and disappeared inside. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Victoria sat in her car feeling increasingly foolish. What was she doing here? Spying on her employee like some kind of stalker. This wasn't who she was. She was reaching for the ignition when the door to Unit 2B opened again. Marcus stepped out onto the small balcony, pushing a wheelchair. Jasmine was in it, wearing the same yellow butterfly dress from the photograph. Marcus positioned the chair so his daughter could see the parking lot below, then knelt beside her. Victoria couldn't hear what he was saying, but she could see his lips moving. He pointed at something in the distance, maybe a bird, maybe a cloud, maybe nothing at all. Jasmine's head turned slowly in the direction he was pointing. Then Marcus began to sing. Victoria rolled down her window, straining to hear. The melody drifted across the parking lot, faint but unmistakable. It was a lullaby, something old and gentle, the kind of song mothers had been singing to children for generations. Jasmine's crooked smile grew wider. Her small hand twitched against the armrest of her wheelchair, and Victoria realized with a start that she was trying to clap. Marcus noticed too. He stopped singing and took his daughter's hands in his. "You like that song, baby girl?" Jasmine made a sound, not a word, just a vocalization. But her eyes were bright, her whole body radiating joy. "I know you do," Marcus said. "That's your favorite, isn't it? The one Grandma used to sing." He kissed the top of her head, then started singing again. This time Jasmine tried to sing along. The sounds she made were unintelligible, just random notes and syllables, but Marcus acted like she was hitting every note perfectly. "That's it, baby girl. Just like that. You sound beautiful." Victoria's vision blurred. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, angry at herself for crying, unable to stop. This was why Marcus understood her daughters. This was why he never gave up on them. Because every single day he came home to a child just like them. Every single day he sang to her, talked to her, treated her like she was the most important person in the world. He didn't see disability. He only saw his daughter. Victoria started the car and drove away before Marcus could notice her. Her hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Her mind was racing. She had spent 5 years treating Lily and Rose like problems to be solved. She had hired experts, purchased equipment, implemented therapies, all designed to fix what was broken. But she had never once sat on the floor with them and sung a lullaby. She had never once acted like their sounds and movements were the most beautiful things she had ever seen. Marcus did that every day. For Jasmine, and for Lily and Rose. He didn't have money. He didn't have resources. He didn't have anything except love. And somehow, love was enough. Victoria pulled over to the side of the road and sat there for a long time, watching the sun sink below the Atlanta skyline. When she finally drove home, she knew what she had to do. The next morning, Victoria was waiting in the foyer when Marcus arrived. He stopped short when he saw her surprise flickering across his face. "Mrs. Sterling, is everything okay?" "I need to talk to you," she said, privately. They went to her office. Victoria closed the door and gestured for him to sit, but she remained standing, too restless to settle. "I know about Jasmine," she said. Marcus went very still. "I know about your service, the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart." Victoria's voice was steady, but her heart was pounding. "I know about Keisha. I know about everything." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You had me investigated." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I needed to understand." Victoria finally sat down, leaning forward with her elbows on the desk. "I needed to understand how a man I've known for 3 weeks could reach my daughters when I've been failing them for 5 years. Marcus looked away. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I'm not anything special, Mrs. Sterling. I'm just a man trying to do right by his little girl. When I see Lily and Rose, I see Jasmine. I see all the things people said she would never do. I see all the times doctors looked at her like she was already gone." He shook his head. "I couldn't stand it. So I started talking to them like they could hear me, because I had to believe they could. And they responded. Eventually. It took time. Weeks of me just sitting there talking to myself, feeling like a fool." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "But then one day, Rose turned her head when I said her name. And I knew. I knew she was in there. They both are. They just needed someone to believe in them." Victoria's eyes burned. "I went to your apartment yesterday," she said quietly. Marcus's head snapped up. "You what?" "I watched you with Jasmine, on the balcony. I saw you singing to her." Victoria's voice broke. "I saw how much you love her." Marcus didn't respond. His hands were clenched in his lap, his knuckles pale against his dark skin. "I've never done that," Victoria continued. "Not once. In 5 years, I've never sat with my daughters and sung to them. I've never treated them like they could understand me. I've been so focused on fixing them that I forgot to just love them." "You love them," Marcus said. "I can see it. You're just scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared of losing them. Scared of getting close and then having them taken away." His dark eyes met hers. "I know that fear, Mrs. Sterling. I live with it every day. Every time Jasmine gets sick, every time she struggles to breathe, I think this could be it. This could be the day I lose her." Victoria's throat constricted. "But I decided a long time ago," Marcus continued, "that I wasn't going to let fear steal the time I have with her. If I only get her for 10 years, or 20, or 50, I'm going to make sure every single day of those years counts. I'm going to make sure she knows she's loved." Victoria stood abruptly and walked to the window. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, trying to compose herself. "My husband used to say something like that," she said. "David. He died when the girls were 3 months old." "I'm sorry." "He used to say that love wasn't about how long you have someone. It's about how deeply you love them while they're here." She turned back to face Marcus. "I forgot that. After he died, I forgot everything he taught me." Marcus nodded slowly. "Grief does that. Makes you forget how to feel anything except pain." "How did you do it?" Victoria asked. "When Keisha left, how did you keep going?" "Jasmine, she needed me. She didn't care that I was broken. She didn't care that I couldn't pay the bills or keep a nice house or give her the life she deserved. She just needed me to be there. So I was." He shrugged. "Some days that's all I could do. Just be there. But it was enough." Victoria walked back to her desk and sat down heavily. "I want you to move in," she said. "You and Jasmine. I meant what I said before. This isn't charity. This is me asking for help. I need someone to teach me how to be a mother to my daughters. And Jasmine needs better care than you can provide on your own." Marcus shook his head. "Mrs. Sterling." "Victoria. Call me Victoria." "Victoria." He said the name like he was testing it. "I appreciate what you're offering, more than I can say. But I can't just uproot Jasmine's life because a rich woman feels guilty." The words stung, but Victoria didn't flinch. "You're right," she said. "I do feel guilty. I've felt guilty for 5 years, but that's not why I'm asking." She leaned forward. "I'm asking because my daughters are speaking for the first time in their lives. I'm asking because they light up when you walk into the room. I'm asking because you're the first person who's ever made me believe they have a future." Marcus was silent for a long moment. "What about Jasmine?" he finally asked. "What happens to her in all this?" "She becomes part of our family. She gets the same care Lily and Rose get, the same nurses, the same therapists, the same medical support. She gets a father who's not exhausted from working double shifts. She gets 2 sisters who are just like her." "Sisters," Marcus repeated. "That's what they would be, wouldn't they? 3 little girls who understand each other in a way no one else can." Victoria's voice softened. "Marcus, I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to give Jasmine the life she deserves. And I'm trying to give my daughters the connection they need. You're the bridge between both of those things." Marcus looked down at his hands. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. I need to talk to Jasmine. Explain things in a way she can understand." "Take all the time you need." Marcus stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Victoria." "Yes." "I watched my daughter reach for a toy yesterday. First time she's ever done that. It took her 3 years to build up the strength and coordination to lift her arm that far." His voice was thick. "I know what it means to wait for a miracle. I know what it means to celebrate something everyone else would think is nothing. I understand your girls because I understand that feeling." Victoria nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "I'll let you know by the end of the week," Marcus said. And then he was gone. Victoria sat alone in her office as the morning sun climbed higher. She thought about David, about all the dreams they had shared for their daughters. She thought about the years of silence, the years of running, the years of hiding from her own children. And she thought about Marcus Thompson, a man who had nothing and gave everything. A man who sang lullabies on a crumbling balcony. A man who believed in miracles because he had no other choice. She didn't know if he would accept her offer. She didn't know if this fragile hope would survive the weight of reality. But for the first time in 5 years, Victoria Sterling was willing to find out. The week that followed was the longest of Victoria's life. She threw herself into work trying to distract herself from the waiting. She sat in on board meetings and reviewed quarterly reports and took calls from investors, all while her mind kept drifting back to the question Marcus hadn't yet answered. But she also did something she hadn't done in years. She spent time with her daughters. Not scheduled visits, not brief check-ins between appointments. Real time. She came to the playroom in the morning and sat on the floor with them. She talked to them about everything and nothing. The weather, the birds outside the window, the dreams she'd had the night before. She read them stories from the picture books Marcus had left behind. At first it felt awkward. Forced. She didn't know how to talk to them without expecting something in return. She didn't know how to be present without an agenda. But slowly, something shifted. On the 3rd day, Lily turned her head when Victoria said her name. On the 4th day, Rose made a sound, just a small vocalization, when Victoria stopped reading mid-sentence. On the 5th day, Victoria was singing the lullaby from David's notebook when both girls went still. Their eyes fixed on her face. Their breathing slowed, and for a moment, just a moment, Victoria felt like they were actually seeing her. She started crying before she could stop herself, big, messy tears that dripped onto the picture book in her lap. She tried to wipe them away, embarrassed, but they kept coming. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her daughters. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here. I'm sorry I didn't see you." Lily's hand twitched. Victoria looked down and saw that her daughter's fingers were brushing against her arm. It could have been a spasm. It could have been nothing. But Victoria chose to believe it was something more. "I see you now," she said. "I promise. I see you now." On Friday afternoon, Marcus knocked on Victoria's office door. She looked up from her desk, her heart suddenly pounding. "Come in." He entered slowly, still in his work uniform. He looked tired, more tired than usual, but there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Something like peace. "I talked to Jasmine," he said. Victoria stood. "And I asked her if she wanted to live in a big house with 2 friends who were just like her. You know what she did." "What?" She smiled, the biggest smile I've ever seen. Marcus's voice caught. "She's never had a friend, Victoria. Not one. Kids don't know how to play with her. Adults don't know how to talk to her. She's been alone her whole life." Victoria felt tears threatening again. "So we'll do it," Marcus said. "We'll move in, but I have conditions." "Name them." "First, I keep my job. I'm still your janitor. I still get a paycheck. I'm not living here as a guest or a charity case." "Done." Second, you don't pay for anything extra for Jasmine. Whatever care you're already providing for your girls, she gets that. Nothing more. That's my condition. His voice was firm. I'm not going to let you turn my daughter into a project. She's not a problem to be solved. She's a little girl who needs love and stability. That's all? Victoria nodded slowly. Okay. Anything else? Marcus hesitated. I need to know that you're serious about this, about learning, about changing. He looked at her with an intensity that made her want to look away. Because if you're just doing this out of guilt, it won't work. Kids can sense that. They know when they're being tolerated instead of loved. I'm serious, Victoria said. I've spent the past week with Lily and Rose. Really with them, not just checking in. And I realized... She struggled to find the words. I realized that I've been terrified of them. Not of the work, not of the responsibility. Of them. Of loving them completely and losing them the way I lost David. And now I'm still terrified. But I'm more terrified of missing the time I have left. Missing who they are while I'm busy trying to fix who they're not. Marcus studied her face for a long moment. Whatever he was looking for, he seemed to find it. Okay, he said. Then we have a deal. Victoria exhaled. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. When can you move in? This weekend, if that works. I don't have much to pack. I'll have the West Wing ready. Marcus turned to leave, then stopped. Victoria. Yes. Thank you. For seeing Jasmine. For seeing all of them. He paused. Most people look at kids like ours and see limitations. You're learning to see possibilities. That matters more than you know. After he left, Victoria walked to the window and looked out at the gardens below. The roses David had planted were blooming red and white and pink against the green lawn. She had ignored them for years, letting the groundskeeper tend them, while she stayed locked in her office. Tomorrow she decided she would go outside and look at them. Really look at them. She was done hiding from beautiful things. On Sunday morning, Marcus's Honda Civic pulled up the long driveway one final time, this time with a small U-Haul trailer attached to the back. Victoria watched from the front steps as he parked, got out, and opened the passenger door. Jasmine was in her wheelchair, wearing a purple dress with white flowers. Her eyes were huge as she looked up at the mansion, and Victoria could see her father's same quiet wonder reflected in her face. Marcus pushed the wheelchair toward the house. Victoria walked down to meet them. Welcome home, she said. She knelt down so she was at Jasmine's eye level. The little girl looked at her with curiosity, but not fear. Hi, Jasmine. I'm Victoria. Do you remember me? Jasmine blinked. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. That's okay, Victoria said. You don't have to talk. But I want you to know something. She reached out and gently took the child's small hand. You have two friends inside who are very excited to meet you. Their names are Lily and Rose. They're just like you, and they've been waiting for you. Something changed in Jasmine's eyes. A light came on, faint but unmistakable. Victoria looked up at Marcus. His face was unreadable, but she could see the shine of tears he was fighting to hold back. Let's go inside, Victoria said. Your new home is waiting. She stood and began walking toward the door. Behind her she heard the wheels of Jasmine's chair on the gravel. She heard Marcus's quiet footsteps. And somewhere inside the house, she knew Lily and Rose were waiting to meet the third member of their unexpected family. Victoria didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if this strange arrangement would work, if wounds would heal, if broken pieces could ever fit together into something whole. But she knew one thing for certain. For the first time in 5 years, her house was no longer empty. The first 2 weeks were harder than Victoria had imagined. Not because of conflict or disagreement. The opposite, actually. Everything was too polite, too careful. Marcus and Jasmine stayed mostly in the West Wing, emerging only for meals and scheduled therapy sessions. Victoria found herself hovering in doorways, unsure whether to enter or retreat. The mansion that had felt empty for 5 years now felt crowded with unspoken words. But the children had no such hesitations. From the moment Jasmine's wheelchair rolled into the playroom, something shifted between the three girls. Lily and Rose, who had spent their entire lives in parallel silence, turned their heads toward this new presence with unmistakable interest. Jasmine, for her part, couldn't stop looking at them. "She's never seen other kids like her," Marcus explained quietly to Victoria on that first day. "In her whole life, she's always been the only one." Victoria watched as Jennifer positioned the 3 wheelchairs in a loose triangle. Lily was closest to the window. Rose was near the bookshelf. Jasmine was between them, her dark eyes darting back and forth like she was watching a tennis match only she could see. "Hi, sweetheart," Marcus said, kneeling beside his daughter. "These are your new friends. This is Lily, and this is Rose. Can you say hi?" Jasmine's mouth moved. No sound came out, but her hand lifted slightly, a tiny wave that probably would have been invisible to anyone who didn't know what to look for. But Lily saw it. Victoria gasped as her daughter's hand rose in response. It was shaky, uncoordinated, barely more than a twitch, but it was undeniably a wave. "Did you see that?" Victoria grabbed Marcus's arm without thinking. She waved back. Lily waved back. Marcus smiled, his eyes glistening. "I told you. They just needed someone who understands." Over the following days, the connection between the 3 girls deepened in ways that defied medical explanation. They developed their own language, a system of sounds and movements and glances that seemed to carry meaning no one else could decipher. Jennifer reported that they were calmer, when together, more alert, more engaged. Dr. Patterson, the neurologist, came for his weekly visit and left, shaking his head in bewilderment. "I don't understand it," he admitted to Victoria. "Their brain scans haven't changed. Their physical capabilities are the same, but their responsiveness has increased dramatically. It's like they've woken up." "What's causing it?" "I don't know. Social stimulation, maybe? The presence of peers who share their experience." He paused. "Or maybe something we don't have a name for yet." Victoria thought about Marcus singing on the balcony, about the way he talked to Jasmine like she could understand every word, about the lullaby from David's notebook. Maybe some things didn't need medical explanations. Maybe some things were just true. By the 3rd week, Victoria had established a new routine. Every morning she woke at 6 and went to the playroom before the nurses arrived. She sat with all 3 girls, her daughters and Jasmine, and talked to them while the sun rose over the gardens. She told them about her childhood in rural Georgia, about meeting David at a pharmaceutical conference, about the dreams they'd had for their family before everything fell apart. The girls couldn't respond with words. But they responded. Lily would turn her head when Victoria mentioned David's name. Rose would make soft sounds when Victoria's voice grew sad. And Jasmine, sweet, watchful Jasmine, would reach her small hand toward Victoria whenever the tears threatened to fall. "You're good at this," Marcus said one morning, finding Victoria on the floor with the 3 girls around her. She looked up, startled. "I didn't hear you come in." "Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not interrupting." Victoria gestured for him to sit. "Join us." Marcus lowered himself to the floor, his knees cracking. He was getting older, Victoria realized. They both were. The lines around his eyes were deeper than they'd been 3 weeks ago. The gray at his temples was more pronounced. "How are you?" she asked. "Tired. Good tired, though." He looked at the girls. "How about you?" "The same, I think." Victoria paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How do you do it? How do you stay so present, so patient?" She shook her head. "I've been doing this for 3 weeks, and I'm already exhausted. You've been doing it for 5 years. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I don't think about 5 years," he said finally. "I think about today, just today. Can I get through today? Can I give Jasmine what she needs for the next hour, the next minute?" He smiled. "The years take care of themselves if you focus on the minutes." That sounds like something David would say. Your husband. Yes, he was a doctor before he went into business. He used to tell me that healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in tiny moments, strung together like beads on a string. Smart man. He was. Victoria's voice caught. I miss him. Every day I miss him. Marcus reached over and put his hand on hers. The gesture was simple, unexpected, and so human that Victoria almost broke down right there on the playroom floor. Tell me about him, Marcus said. If you want to. So she did. She told him about how David used to sing off-key in the shower, how he burned every meal he ever tried to cook, how he cried at commercials with dogs in them. She told him about their wedding, small and intimate, in a garden in Savannah. She told him about the day she found out she was pregnant with twins, how David had actually fainted, and she had to call 911. Marcus laughed at that, a deep rumbling sound that made Jasmine turn her head toward him. He sounds like a good man, Marcus said. He was the best man I ever knew. Victoria wiped her eyes. I thought I would never stop missing him. And then I realized something worse. I had stopped feeling anything at all. Missing him, loving our daughters. I just went numb. That's how grief works sometimes. Shuts everything down so you can survive. Is that what happened to you? When Keisha left? Marcus's expression flickered. Different kind of grief, he said. Losing someone to death is one thing. Losing someone because they choose to leave is another. He took a deep breath. She couldn't handle Jasmine. The doctors, the therapies, the constant needs. She said it wasn't what she signed up for. I'm sorry. Don't be. She was right in a way. It wasn't what she signed up for. It wasn't what either of us signed up for. He looked at Jasmine and his face softened. But I couldn't walk away. She's my daughter. She didn't choose to be born this way. She didn't choose any of it. Neither did you. No. But I chose to be her father. And that choice doesn't come with conditions. He turned to Victoria. You chose to be Lily and Rose's mother. That choice doesn't come with conditions either. Victoria felt the words hit her like a physical blow. For 5 years, she had been treating her motherhood like a conditional arrangement, something she would fully commit to once her daughters were better, once the therapies worked, once the miracle happened. But Marcus was right. Motherhood wasn't conditional. It wasn't something you earned or waited for or held at arm's length. It was something you lived, every day, every minute. I wasted so much time, she whispered. Then stop wasting it now. The words were blunt, almost harsh. But when Victoria looked at Marcus, she saw no judgment in his eyes, only understanding. How? She asked. How do I make up for 5 years of running away? You don't? Marcus said. You can't get that time back. But you can decide what you do with the time you have left. Starting now. Starting today. Victoria looked at her daughters. Lily was watching her with those quiet, knowing eyes. Rose was making soft sounds, almost like she was humming. And Jasmine was looking back and forth between her father and Victoria with an expression of intense concentration. Okay, Victoria said. Today. I start today. Marcus smiled. That's all any of us can do. That afternoon, the weather forecast changed. Jennifer came to Victoria's office with concern on her face. Mrs. Sterling, there's a severe storm warning for tonight. Category 3 potential. They're saying it could be the worst Atlanta has seen in 20 years. Victoria looked up from her computer. What do we need to do? I've already contacted the backup generator company. They confirmed we have enough fuel for 72 hours. Medical supplies are stocked. I've asked the night nursing staff to come in early just in case. Good. What about the girls? That's what I wanted to discuss. The playroom has large windows. If the storm is as bad as they're predicting, I'd recommend moving them to the interior rooms. Less glass, more protection. Do it. Whatever you need. Jennifer nodded and left. Victoria stood and walked to the window. The sky was already darkening, though it was only mid-afternoon. The air had that heavy electric quality that preceded serious weather. She thought about David again. He had always loved storms. He would stand on the porch and watch the lightning, counting the seconds between flash and thunder. "Nature reminding us who's boss," he used to say with a grin. Victoria had never shared his enthusiasm. To her, storms meant danger, unpredictability, loss of control. But she couldn't control what was coming. All she could do was prepare. By 6 o'clock, the wind had picked up significantly. Rain began falling in sheets, hammering against the windows like thousands of tiny fists demanding entry. The lights flickered twice, and Victoria heard the generator kick on with a reassuring hum. She found Marcus in the interior room where the girls had been moved. All three were in their chairs, positioned in a circle facing each other. Marcus was sitting on the floor between them, reading from a picture book. "How are they?" Victoria asked. "Restless. They can feel the pressure changing." He looked up. "Jasmine gets scared during storms. She can't tell me, but I can see it in her eyes." "What do you do?" "I sing to her. Hold her hand. Let her know I'm not going anywhere." Victoria knelt down beside Lily's chair. Her daughter's eyes were wide, her small body tense. "Hey, sweetheart," Victoria said softly. "Are you scared?" No response. But Lily's hand twitched toward her mother's arm. Victoria took her daughter's hand and held it gently. "It's okay. It's just a storm. It'll pass." The first crack of thunder made all three girls flinch. Rose started making distressed sounds, high-pitched whimpers that Victoria had never heard before. Jasmine's breathing became rapid and shallow. "They're panicking," Marcus said. He moved to Jasmine's side, pulling her close. "It's okay, baby girl. Daddy's here. Daddy's not going anywhere." Victoria looked at her daughters, both rigid with fear, and realized she didn't know what to do. She had never comforted them through a storm. She had always been somewhere else. Her office, her bedroom, anywhere but with them. "What do I do?" she asked Marcus, her voice desperate. "How do I help them?" "Just be here. Talk to them. Sing to them. Let them feel your presence." Victoria's mind went blank. She couldn't think of any songs. She couldn't think of anything except the howling wind and her daughters' terrified faces. Then she remembered the notebook. David's notebook. She still kept it in her bedside drawer. She had memorized every word, every song, but she had never sung them out loud. Not once in 5 years. Victoria opened her mouth and began to sing. Her voice was shaky, at first thin and uncertain. The melody was the lullaby from David's notebook, the one Marcus had been singing that first day in the playroom. The words came back to her slowly, haltingly, like she was learning to speak again after years of silence. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird." She changed the words without thinking, not "Mama's gonna buy you." David's version had been different. He had written his own verses, silly and sweet, about stars and dreams and always being there. "And if that star should fall from the sky, Daddy will catch it and teach it to fly." Victoria's voice grew stronger. She looked at Lily, then at Rose. Both girls had gone still. Their eyes were fixed on her face with an intensity she had never seen before. "And if that dream should drift away, Mama will find it and make it stay." The thunder cracked again, but the girls didn't flinch this time. They were focused entirely on Victoria's voice. Marcus watched in silence, his hand still holding Jasmine's. A tear slipped down his cheek, but he made no move to wipe it away. Victoria kept singing. She sang the verses David had written, and made up new ones on the spot. She sang until her throat was raw, until the storm seemed to fade into background noise, until the only thing that mattered was the sound of her voice reaching her daughters. When the song finally ended, the room was silent except for the distant rumble of thunder. And then Rose made a sound. It was soft, barely audible, but Victoria heard it clearly. Ma, Ma. Victoria's heart stopped. Did she? She looked at Marcus, her eyes wide. Did she just? Mama, Rose said again, clearer this time. Unmistakable. Victoria burst into tears. She couldn't help it. The dam she had built over 5 years of grief and guilt and fear finally broke, and everything came flooding out at once. Yes, she sobbed, pulling Rose into her arms as best she could with the wheelchair between them. Yes, baby. I'm Mama. I'm here. I'm right here. Lily made a sound, too. Higher, softer, but recognizable. Ma. Ma. Victoria reached for her other daughter, pulling both girls close, her body shaking with sobs. 5 years of silence, and now, in the middle of a storm, her daughters had found their voices. And they had found her. Marcus held Jasmine tight, his own tears flowing freely now. The little girl was watching Victoria and the twins with something like wonder on her face. Duh, Jasmine said softly. Marcus laughed through his tears. I know, baby girl. I see it too. The storm raged outside for another 3 hours. The power flickered several times, but the generator held. Rain lashed the windows. Wind screamed through the eaves. But inside that small interior room, something profound had shifted. Victoria didn't leave her daughter's side all night. She sat on the floor between their chairs, holding their hands, singing, when they seemed scared, talking, when they seemed calm. Marcus did the same with Jasmine, and somehow, without planning it, without discussing it, they ended up sitting side by side, their children around them, weathering the storm together. Somewhere around midnight, the thunder began to fade. The rain softened from a roar to a whisper. The worst had passed. Victoria looked at Marcus. His face was drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes were peaceful. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For teaching me. For showing me what I should have been doing all along. Marcus shook his head. You did this yourself, Victoria. You sang to them. You stayed with them. You made them feel safe. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could. You just didn't know it yet. Victoria looked at her daughters, both finally asleep in their chairs. Their faces were peaceful, their breathing steady. She had spent 5 years believing she was a failure as a mother. 5 years believing that she couldn't give her daughters what they needed. 5 years running from the truth. But the truth was simple. Her daughters didn't need perfect. They didn't need fixed. They just needed her. And finally, she was here. Around 2 in the morning, Victoria realized she couldn't keep her eyes open any longer. She leaned her head against Lily's wheelchair, letting exhaustion claim her. Just before sleep took her, she felt something. A small hand reaching through the bars of the wheelchair, touching her hair. Lily. Her daughter was touching her. Victoria smiled and let the darkness come. When she woke, the storm was over. Pale morning light filtered through the windows. The generator had shut off, replaced by the steady hum of restored power. Victoria sat up slowly, her body stiff from sleeping on the floor. The girls were still asleep. Marcus was gone, but she could hear movement in the kitchen, probably Jennifer preparing breakfast. She looked at Lily, then at Rose. Her daughters. Her children. For 5 years, she had been a mother in name only. She had paid bills and hired staff and signed medical forms. But she hadn't been present. She hadn't been there. Now she was. Victoria reached out and touched Lily's cheek. The little girl stirred, but didn't wake. I'm sorry, Victoria whispered. I'm sorry for all the time I lost. But I'm here now, and I'm never leaving again. She meant every word. What Victoria didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that the real test of that promise was still to come. The storm outside had passed, but another storm was gathering, one that would shake the foundations of everything she had built, everything she believed, everything she hoped for. And it would arrive sooner than anyone expected. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning 3 weeks after the storm. Victoria was in the playroom with the girls when Jennifer appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Mrs. Sterling, you need to see this." Victoria looked up from where she was sitting on the floor, Lily's hand in hers. "What is it?" "A letter. From a law firm in Macon. It's addressed to Marcus, but—" Jennifer hesitated. "I think you should read it too." Victoria stood, her heart beginning to race. She took the envelope from Jennifer and looked at the return address. Williams and Associates Family Law. Williams. That was Keisha's maiden name. Victoria found Marcus in the kitchen making oatmeal for Jasmine. He looked up when she entered, saw the envelope in her hand, and went still. "What's that?" "It came for you this morning." Victoria held it out. "I think it's from Keisha." The color drained from Marcus's face. He wiped his hands on a towel, took the envelope and stared at it for a long moment without opening it. "Marcus." He didn't answer. His hands were shaking slightly as he tore open the envelope and pulled out the letter inside. Victoria watched his eyes move across the page, watched his expression shift from confusion to disbelief to something that looked like pure terror. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." "What is it? What does it say?" Marcus looked at her, and Victoria saw something she had never seen in his eyes before. Fear. Raw, desperate fear. "She wants Jasmine back." Victoria felt the words like a punch to the stomach. "What?" "Keisha. She's filed for custody." Marcus's voice cracked. "She says she's remarried. Her new husband is a surgeon. They have a house in Buckhead. She says she can provide a better life for Jasmine than I can." "That's insane. She abandoned her daughter. She hasn't seen Jasmine in 3 years." "Doesn't matter." Marcus sank into a chair, the letter crumpling in his fist. "She's the biological mother. Georgia courts favor mothers in custody cases. And she's right on paper she can offer more than I can. A 2-parent household, financial stability, a father who's a doctor instead of a janitor." "You're Jasmine's father. You've been there for her every single day." "I know that. You know that. But will a judge know that—" Marcus pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. "I've seen this before, Victoria. I've seen fathers lose their kids to mothers who walked away years ago. The courts don't care about who actually raised the child. They care about who looks better in a courtroom." Victoria sat down across from him, her mind racing. "We'll fight this. We'll get you the best lawyers money can buy. With what money I make $12 an hour. With my money, I'll pay for everything." Marcus looked up sharply. "No." "Marcus." "No." His voice was firm despite the tremor in it. "I'm not taking your money for this. This is my fight, my daughter. I'll figure it out on my own." "Don't be stupid. This isn't about pride. This is about Jasmine. I know what it's about." Marcus stood abruptly pacing the kitchen. "You think I don't know what it's about? You think I haven't been terrified of this exact moment since the day Keisha left every night for 3 years? I've gone to sleep wondering if this would be the day she came back, the day she decided she wanted to play mother again." Victoria watched him pace, her heart aching. She had never seen him like this, unraveled, desperate, lost. "Marcus, please. Let me help." He stopped pacing and turned to face her. His eyes were red, his jaw clenched. "Why? Why do you care so much about what happens to me and Jasmine?" The question hung in the air between them. Victoria felt something shift inside her, some wall she had been maintaining without even realizing it. "Because you're family," she said quietly. "You and Jasmine. You're part of this family now. And I don't abandon my family." Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then something broke in his expression, and the tears he had been fighting finally spilled over. "I can't lose her, Victoria. She's all I have. She's everything." Victoria stood and crossed the kitchen. She put her arms around Marcus and held him while he cried, this strong, patient man who had held everything together for so long, finally allowing himself to fall apart. "You won't lose her," Victoria said fiercely. I won't let that happen. Do you hear me? I won't let that happen. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and legal consultations. Victoria contacted the best family law firm in Atlanta, Harrison Clark and Associates, and retained them to represent Marcus. She didn't tell him how much it cost. She didn't want to hear his objections. The senior partner, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Clark, reviewed the case and gave them her assessment. "It's not going to be easy," she said, sitting across from Victoria and Marcus in her downtown office. Keisha's petition is well constructed. She's arguing that her circumstances have changed substantially since the divorce. She's remarried, financially stable, and claims to have undergone therapy to address the issues that led her to leave. "She abandoned her daughter," Marcus said. "She walked out and never looked back." That's your perspective. Her petition frames it differently. She says she was suffering from severe postpartum depression and that leaving was the only way she could survive. She says she's been in treatment for 3 years and is now ready to be a mother. That's a lie. Maybe. But it's a compelling narrative, and judges respond to narratives of redemption. Patricia leaned forward. Here's what we're up against. Keisha is presenting herself as a reformed mother who made a difficult choice during a mental health crisis. Her new husband is a respected surgeon with no criminal record, no history of substance abuse, and a household income in the high 6 figures. They have a house in one of the best school districts in Georgia. Jasmine doesn't go to school, Victoria interjected. She requires full-time medical care. Keisha's petition addresses that. She says they're prepared to hire a team of specialists and provide round-the-clock nursing care. She's arguing that they can offer Jasmine a higher standard of living than Marcus can. Marcus's hands clenched in his lap. A higher standard of living. I've been her father for 5 years. I've changed every diaper administered, every medication sat up with her through every seizure. Where was Keisha for all of that? I understand your anger, Mr. Thompson, and I promise you we'll use everything we have to fight this. But I need you to understand the reality. In Georgia, mothers have a significant advantage in custody cases. And Keisha's attorneys are going to paint a picture of you as a well-meaning but inadequate father who can't provide the resources Jasmine needs. What about the fact that he's living in my home now? Victoria asked. He has access to all the same resources Keisha is claiming to offer. Patricia hesitated. That complicates things. How? Keisha's petition mentions it. She's arguing that Marcus is essentially a charity case, that he's only able to provide for Jasmine because of your generosity, and that this arrangement is inherently unstable. What happens if you decide to end it? What happens if you die, or lose your fortune, or simply change your mind? Victoria felt anger rising in her chest. That's absurd. We're a family. Are you? Patricia's voice was gentle but direct. Legally speaking, you have no connection to Marcus or Jasmine. You're not married. You haven't adopted Jasmine. There's no legal framework protecting this arrangement. In the eyes of the court, you're just a wealthy woman who let her janitor move into her house. The words landed like a slap. Victoria saw Marcus flinch beside her. Then we create a legal framework, Victoria said, whatever it takes. That would certainly help, but it takes time. Keisha has requested an expedited hearing. The judge granted it. We go to court in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Victoria felt the weight of that deadline pressing down on her. What do we need to do? She asked. Document everything. Every moment Marcus has spent caring for Jasmine. Every therapy session, every doctor's appointment, every middle-of-the-night emergency. We need to build a picture of a father who has been present, devoted, and irreplaceable. Patricia turned to Marcus. I also need you to be prepared for what's coming. Keisha's lawyers are going to dig into your past. They're going to look for anything they can use against you. I don't have anything to hide. Everyone has something. It doesn't have to be criminal. It could be financial struggles, periods of unemployment, times when Jasmine's care was less than perfect. They'll find it, and they'll use it. Marcus's jaw tightened. I've done the best I could with what I had. I know, and that's what we're going to prove. Patricia stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "I'll be in touch with a detailed preparation plan. In the meantime, Mr. Thompson, do not contact Keisha directly. Do not respond to any communication from her attorneys. Everything goes through me." As they walked out of the office building, Marcus was silent. Victoria could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigid set of his spine. "Marcus." He didn't respond. "Marcus, talk to me." He stopped walking and turned to face her. His eyes were hollow. "She's going to win, isn't she?" "No, we're not going to let that happen." "You heard what Patricia said. On paper, Keisha is everything I'm not. Rich, stable, married. She can give Jasmine things I'll never be able to give her." "She can give Jasmine things," Victoria said firmly. "But she can't give Jasmine you. She can't give Jasmine the father who sang to her every night. The father who never gave up. The father who saw her when everyone else looked away. A judge doesn't care about that. Then we'll make the judge care." Marcus shook his head. "I shouldn't have moved into your house. I should have stayed in that apartment in East Point. At least then Keisha couldn't accuse me of being a charity case." "Don't say that. Don't you dare say that." "It's true, isn't it? I am a charity case. I couldn't provide for my daughter on my own. I needed you to save me." Victoria grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. "Listen to me. You are not a charity case. You are the strongest, most devoted father I have ever known. You didn't need saving, you needed support. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. A charity case takes without giving. You've given more to me and my daughters in 2 months than anyone has given us in 5 years. You gave us hope. You gave us connection. You gave us a reason to believe that healing was possible." Victoria's voice broke. "So don't you dare stand there and tell me you're just a charity case. Because you're not. You're family." Marcus stared at her, something shifting in his expression. "Victoria." "No. I'm not finished." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone. When David died, I wanted to die too. I looked at my 2 disabled daughters, and I thought, what's the point? They'll never have normal lives. They'll never know their father. They'll never call me Mama." Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't stop. "But then you came along. And you showed me that I was wrong about all of it. My daughters can speak, they can connect, they can love, and I can be their mother, not the mother I thought I had to be, but the mother they actually need." She grabbed both of Marcus's hands. "You did that. You changed everything. So I am not going to stand by and watch Keisha take your daughter away from you. I will fight for you the way you fought for my girls. Do you understand me?" Marcus was crying now too. He pulled Victoria into an embrace, holding her tightly in the middle of the downtown Atlanta sidewalk. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." They stood there for a long moment, 2 broken people holding each other together. When Victoria finally pulled back, she wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. "Now, let's go home and figure out how to win this thing." The 6 weeks that followed were the most intense of Victoria's life. She and Marcus worked with Patricia Clark's team to build their case. They gathered every document, every receipt, every photograph that showed Marcus's dedication to Jasmine. They obtained statements from doctors, therapists, and nurses who had witnessed his commitment firsthand. Victoria also made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. "I want to testify," she told Patricia during one of their strategy sessions. Patricia raised an eyebrow. "That's not necessary, Mrs. Sterling. You're not a party to this case." "I know, but I want the judge to hear from someone who has seen Marcus and Jasmine together, someone who can speak to what kind of father he really is. Keisha's attorneys will try to discredit you. They'll say you're biased. They'll imply that you have a personal relationship with Marcus that clouds your judgment. Let them try. I know what I've seen." Patricia studied her for a moment. "All right. We'll put you on the witness list." Meanwhile, Keisha's legal team was not idle. They subpoenaed Marcus's financial records, his employment history, his medical records. They sent a child psychologist to evaluate Jasmine, an evaluation that Marcus was legally required to allow. The psychologist, a woman named Dr. Sandra Wells, spent 2 hours with Jasmine in the playroom. Marcus wasn't allowed to be present, and the waiting nearly killed him. He paced the hallway outside, his hands clenched, his face drawn. Victoria stayed with him. "She'll be okay," she said. "Jasmine knows who her father is. No psychologist is going to change that. What if she's confused? What if she doesn't respond well to strangers? Then the psychologist will see exactly what we've been saying, that Jasmine needs consistency and familiarity, that ripping her away from her father would be devastating." When Dr. Wells finally emerged, her expression was unreadable. "Mr. Thompson, may I speak with you privately?" Marcus looked at Victoria, fear in his eyes. "Go," she said. "I'll be right here." The conversation lasted 20 minutes. When Marcus came out, his face was pale, but his eyes were clearer. "What did she say?" Victoria asked. "She said—" Marcus paused, collecting himself. "She said Jasmine showed clear signs of secure attachment to me. She said that in her professional opinion, removing Jasmine from my care would cause significant psychological harm." Victoria grabbed his arm. "Marcus, that's good news. That's exactly what we needed." "It's one opinion. Keisha's team will probably hire their own psychologist who says the opposite." "Maybe. But Dr. Wells is court-appointed. Her opinion carries weight." For the first time in weeks, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "Maybe we actually have a chance." "We have more than a chance. We have the truth on our side." The night before the hearing, Victoria couldn't sleep. She wandered through the darkened mansion, eventually finding herself in the playroom. The 3 wheelchairs sat empty in the moonlight, Lily's, Rose's, and Jasmine's. 3 little girls who had found each other against all odds. Victoria sat down on the floor, where she had learned to sing to her daughters, where she had heard their first words, where she had finally become the mother she was always meant to be. Marcus found her there an hour later. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, lowering himself to sit beside her. "No." They sat in silence for a while, 2 people on the edge of something neither could control. "I've been thinking," Victoria said finally, "about what Patricia said, about legal frameworks." "Yeah?" "She was right. We need to formalize this. Make it real." Victoria turned to look at him. "I want to adopt Jasmine." Marcus went very still. "What?" "If we can show the court that Jasmine has 2 stable parental figures, that strengthens our case. It proves this isn't just charity, it's commitment." "Victoria, that's a huge thing to ask." "I'm not asking. I'm offering." She reached over and took his hand. "Marcus, I love that little girl. I love her like she's my own daughter. These past weeks, watching her with Lily and Rose, watching her grow and respond and reach out, I can't imagine this family without her." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "You'd really do that? Legally make her your daughter?" "Yes, if you'll let me." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "There's something else I've been thinking about." "What?" He turned to face her fully. "I've been thinking about what Patricia said, about how we look to the court. A janitor living in a billionaire's house. No legal connection. No framework. We're creating a framework. The adoption. That's not enough." Marcus took a breath. "Victoria, I don't know how to say this. I've never been good with words. But these past months, living here, being part of this family, something's changed. For me." Victoria's heart began to pound. "What do you mean?" "I mean—" He struggled, his dark eyes searching her face. "I mean, I've started to feel things I didn't expect to feel. Things I thought I'd never feel again after Keisha." Victoria's breath caught. "Marcus, I know it's crazy. I know you're a billionaire and I'm a janitor. I know we come from completely different worlds. But when I look at you, when I see you with the girls, when I hear you sing, when I watch you fight for what's right. I see someone I could—" He trailed off, unable to finish. "Someone you could what?" "Someone I could love, if you'd let me." The words hung in the air between them. Victoria felt something crack open inside her, something she had kept locked away since David died. "Marcus, You don't have to answer. I shouldn't have said anything. Tomorrow is the hearing, and we need to focus." "Marcus." He stopped talking. Victoria leaned forward and kissed him. It was gentle, tentative, two wounded people testing the waters. But when Marcus's hand came up to cup her face, when he kissed her back with 5 years of loneliness pouring through the contact, it became something more. Something real. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were trembling. "What does this mean?" Marcus whispered. "I don't know," Victoria admitted. "But I know I want to find out. After tomorrow. After we win this thing." She took his hand again. Together. Marcus smiled, a real smile full of hope. Together. They sat there in the moonlight, hands intertwined, until dawn began to break through the windows. Whatever happened in court today, they would face it as a family. The Fulton County Courthouse stood like a monument to everything that could go wrong. Victoria arrived at 8 in the morning, Marcus beside her in the only suit he owned, a charcoal gray two-piece that Jennifer had pressed the night before. He had barely spoken since they left the house. His hands kept fidgeting with his tie, loosening it, tightening it, loosening it again. "Stop that," Victoria said gently, reaching over to straighten the knot. "You look fine." "I don't feel fine. I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's normal. It means you care." They walked through the metal detectors and up to the 3rd floor, where Patricia Clark was already waiting outside courtroom 3B. She was wearing a navy suit and carrying a leather briefcase thick with documents. "How are we feeling?" she asked. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "Good. Use it. Channel it into focus." Patricia looked at both of them. "Here's what's going to happen. Keisha's team will present first. They'll paint a picture of a reformed mother who made difficult choices during a mental health crisis and is now ready to provide Jasmine with a better life. They'll emphasize resources stability and their 2-parent household. And then we respond. We present evidence of your continuous care, your bond with Jasmine, the psychological evaluation and testimony from medical professionals who have witnessed your dedication." Patricia paused. "Victoria, you'll testify after Dr. Patterson. Are you ready?" "Yes." "Remember, stay calm, answer only what's asked, and don't let opposing counsel bait you into emotional responses. They're going to try to paint you as a wealthy woman who's overstepping, inserting herself into a custody matter that doesn't concern her. Let them try." Patricia nodded. "All right, let's go in." The courtroom was smaller than Victoria had imagined. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lighting, rows of benches that reminded her of church pews. At the front, the judge's bench loomed like an altar. Keisha was already seated at the plaintiff's table with her legal team. Victoria had never seen her in person before, only in photographs from the case file. She was beautiful, high cheekbones, elegant posture, designer dress. Beside her sat a man in an expensive suit who Victoria assumed was the new husband, Dr. Raymond Foster. Keisha turned when they entered. Her eyes found Marcus, and something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or regret. Then her expression hardened, and she turned back around. Marcus stiffened beside Victoria. "Don't look at her," Patricia murmured. "Focus on the judge. That's the only person who matters today." They took their seats at the defendant's table. Victoria reached under the table and squeezed Marcus's hand. He squeezed back hard enough that it almost hurt. The bailiff called the court to order. Everyone rose as Judge Helen Watkins entered, a stern-faced black woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. Victoria had researched her extensively. 22 years on the family court bench, known for being fair but demanding, not easily swayed by emotional appeals. "Be seated," Judge Watkins said. She shuffled through some papers, then looked up. "We're here today in the matter of Williams versus Thompson petition for modification of custody. Counsel, are both parties ready to proceed?" "Yes, Your Honor." Both attorneys responded. "Very well. Ms. Williams, you may present your case." Keisha's attorney, a silver-haired man named Robert Hartwell, rose to his feet. "Thank you, Your Honor. My client, Keisha Williams Foster, is here today to seek custody of her biological daughter, Jasmine Marie Thompson. Ms. Williams acknowledges that she made the difficult decision to leave the family home 3 years ago. What she does not acknowledge is the characterization of that decision as abandonment." Victoria felt Marcus tense beside her. "The truth, Your Honor, is that Ms. Williams was suffering from severe postpartum depression that went undiagnosed and untreated for nearly 2 years. By the time Jasmine was 2 years old, Ms. Williams was in crisis. She was not sleeping. She was not eating. She was experiencing intrusive thoughts and overwhelming feelings of inadequacy. She believed incorrectly, but sincerely, that Jasmine would be better off without her." Hartwell paused for effect. Leaving was not a choice Ms. Williams made lightly. It was a desperate act by a woman in the grip of a serious mental illness. And for the past 3 years, she has done the hard work of recovery. She has been in intensive therapy. She has remarried a stable, successful man who is prepared to be a father to Jasmine. She has built a home that can provide Jasmine with every resource she needs. He gestured toward Marcus. "Mr. Thompson is not a bad man. He has done his best under difficult circumstances. But the reality is that his best is not enough. He works as a janitor, earning $12 an hour. Until recently, he was living in a 2-bedroom apartment in a low-income neighborhood. He has no savings, no retirement fund, no ability to provide for Jasmine's long-term care." Victoria's jaw clenched. She wanted to stand up and scream that none of that mattered, that Marcus had given Jasmine something no amount of money could buy. But she stayed silent. Recently, Mr. Thompson moved into the home of Victoria Sterling, a billionaire pharmaceutical executive. While this arrangement has temporarily improved his material circumstances, it is not a stable foundation for Jasmine's future. Ms. Sterling has no legal connection to Mr. Thompson or to Jasmine. She could terminate this arrangement at any time, leaving Mr. Thompson exactly where he was before struggling to provide basic necessities for a severely disabled child. Hartwell returned to his seat. "Your Honor, my client is not here to vilify Mr. Thompson. She is here because she loves her daughter and believes she can now provide the life Jasmine deserves. We ask that custody be transferred to Ms. Williams with appropriate visitation rights for Mr. Thompson." Judge Watkins made a note on her pad. "Thank you, Mr. Hartwell. Ms. Clark, your response." Patricia stood. "Your Honor, my client Marcus Thompson has been Jasmine's sole caregiver for 3 years. Not partially, not occasionally, solely. When Keisha Williams walked out of their home in 2021, she did not look back. She did not call. She did not visit. She did not send birthday cards or Christmas presents. She simply vanished from her daughter's life." Patricia walked toward the center of the courtroom. "We have heard opposing counsel describe this as a mental health crisis, and perhaps it was. But mental health crises do not last 3 years. Mental health crises do not prevent someone from making a single phone call to check on their child. Mental health crises do not explain why Ms. Williams never once reached out to Mr. Thompson to ask how Jasmine was doing." She turned to face the judge directly. "The truth, Your Honor, is that Keisha Williams made a choice. She chose herself over her daughter. And for 3 years, while she was building her new life, Marcus Thompson was doing everything in his power to give Jasmine the love and care she deserved." Patricia returned to the defendant's table and picked up a thick folder. "We have documentation of every doctor's appointment Mr. Thompson has attended with Jasmine, every therapy session, every emergency room visit. We have statements from nurses and physicians who have witnessed his dedication firsthand. And we have a psychological evaluation from Dr. Sandra Wells, a court-appointed expert who concluded that Jasmine shows clear signs of secure attachment to her father, and that removing her from his care would cause significant psychological harm. Patricia set the folder down. Your Honor, this case is not about money. It is not about who has the bigger house or the more impressive job title. It is about one fundamental question: who has been there for Jasmine? Who has shown up day after day, year after year, when showing up was hard? The answer to that question is Marcus Thompson, and we respectfully ask that the court recognize his dedication by denying Ms. Williams's petition. Judge Watkins nodded. Thank you, Ms. Clark. We'll now hear testimony. Mr. Hartwell, call your first witness. The morning was brutal. Keisha took the stand first. She cried as she described her postpartum depression, her feelings of inadequacy, her belief that Jasmine would be better off without her. She talked about her therapy, her recovery, her new marriage. She talked about the nursery she had prepared in her Buckhead home, the team of specialists she had already consulted, the plans she had made for Jasmine's care. I made a terrible mistake, Keisha said, her voice trembling. I know that now, but I've spent 3 years trying to become the mother Jasmine deserves. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I've changed. When Patricia cross-examined her, she was methodical and precise. Ms. Williams, you testified that you left because you believed Jasmine would be better off without you. Is that correct? Yes. And in the 3 years since you left, how many times have you contacted Mr. Thompson to check on Jasmine's well-being? Keisha hesitated. I didn't think it would be appropriate. How many times, Ms. Williams? None. How many birthday cards have you sent Jasmine? None. How many Christmas presents? None. Any communication at all? A letter? An email? A text message? Keisha's composure cracked slightly. No. So, your concern for Jasmine's well-being, your belief that she would be better off without you, that concern apparently did not extend to finding out whether she was in fact better off. I was in therapy. My therapist advised me to focus on my own recovery. For 3 years. Keisha didn't answer. No further questions, Your Honor. The afternoon brought medical testimony. Dr. Patterson testified about Jasmine's condition and care requirements. He confirmed that Marcus had been present at every appointment, had followed every recommendation, had been an exemplary caregiver. In your professional opinion, Patricia asked, has Mr. Thompson provided adequate care for Jasmine? More than adequate, Dr. Patterson replied. He has been exceptional. I've worked with hundreds of families dealing with severe disabilities, and I can say without hesitation that Marcus Thompson is one of the most dedicated fathers I have ever encountered. Then it was Victoria's turn. She walked to the witness stand, her heart pounding. She had testified in depositions before in business disputes and contract negotiations. But this was different. This mattered in a way nothing had ever mattered. Patricia began with easy questions. How did Victoria know Marcus? How long had he been living in her home? What had she observed about his relationship with Jasmine? Victoria answered calmly, precisely, keeping her emotions in check. Then Hartwell stood for cross-examination. Ms. Sterling, you are one of the wealthiest women in Georgia, is that correct? Yes. And you invited Mr. Thompson and his daughter to live in your home approximately 2 months ago? Yes. What is the nature of your relationship with Mr. Thompson? Victoria felt the trap being laid. He is an employee and a friend. Just an employee and a friend. Yes. Hartwell smiled slightly. Ms. Sterling, isn't it true that you have developed romantic feelings for Mr. Thompson? Patricia stood. Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. I'll allow it, Judge Watkins said. But tread carefully, Mr. Hartwell. Ms. Sterling. Victoria took a breath. My personal feelings are not relevant to this case. What is relevant is what I have observed about Marcus Thompson as a father. Please, answer the question. Victoria looked at Marcus, then back at Hartwell. Yes. I have developed feelings for Marcus. But those feelings did not exist when I first invited him to live in my home. They developed because I watched him care for his daughter with a devotion I have rarely seen in my life. They developed because he is a good man. So you admit that your testimony may be biased by your romantic involvement. I admit that I care about Marcus Thompson. I do not admit that my observations are biased. Everything I have said about his dedication to Jasmine is objectively true and documented by medical professionals who have no personal stake in this case. Hartwell tried a few more angles, but Victoria held firm. When she finally stepped down from the witness stand, her legs were shaking. Marcus caught her eye as she returned to her seat. He mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." The final witness was Marcus himself. He walked to the stand slowly, his movements stiff with tension. Victoria could see his hands trembling as he placed them on the wooden rail. Patricia's questions were designed to let him tell his story. How he had felt when Jasmine was born. How he had reacted to her diagnosis. How he had coped when Keisha left. What his daily routine with Jasmine looked like. What his hopes were for her future. Marcus answered quietly but clearly. He talked about the first time Jasmine smiled at him. Really smiled after months of therapy. He talked about learning to interpret her sounds and movements to understand what she needed without words. He talked about the fear that kept him up at night. Fear that he wasn't enough, that he couldn't give her what she deserved. "Mr. Thompson," Patricia asked, "why do you want to retain custody of Jasmine?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Because she's my daughter," he finally said. "Because I made her a promise the day she was born. I told her that no matter what happened, no matter how hard things got, I would never give up on her. I would never walk away." His voice broke. "I know I'm not rich. I know I can't give her a big house or fancy doctors or all the things money can buy. But I can give her me. I can give her a father who will be there every single day, who will fight for her, who will love her without conditions." He looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor, I'm not asking you to believe that I'm perfect. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I've had days when I didn't know how I was going to make it through. But I never stopped showing up. I never stopped trying. And I never ever stopped loving my daughter." The courtroom was silent. Hartwell's cross-examination was brief and unsuccessful. Marcus answered every question with the same quiet dignity, never losing his composure, never taking the bait. When he stepped down from the stand, Victoria saw tears on Judge Watkins' face. The judge quickly wiped them away, but Victoria had seen them. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Closing arguments were short. Hartwell repeated his themes of resources and stability. Patricia repeated hers of dedication and love. Then it was over, and Judge Watkins announced she would take a brief recess before delivering her ruling. The wait was agony. Victoria and Marcus sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, surrounded by Patricia and her team. Neither of them spoke. Marcus held Victoria's hand so tightly she thought he might crush her fingers. 20 minutes passed. 30. 45. Finally, the bailiff emerged. "Judge Watkins is ready to deliver her ruling." They filed back into the courtroom. Victoria's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Judge Watkins entered and took her seat. She looked at both tables, her expression unreadable. "This has been a difficult case," she began. "Both parties clearly love Jasmine and want what is best for her. That is not in dispute." She removed her reading glasses and set them on the bench. "What is in dispute is who can best provide for Jasmine's needs, not just her material needs, but her emotional and psychological needs as well." She turned to Keisha. "Ms. Williams, I do not doubt that you suffered during the years after Jasmine's birth. Postpartum depression is a serious illness, and I commend you for seeking treatment. However, I cannot ignore the fact that for 3 years you made no effort to contact your daughter or to ascertain her well-being. Recovery from mental illness does not preclude a phone call. It does not preclude a letter. Your complete absence from Jasmine's life during this period suggests that your decision to leave was not solely the product of illness, but also of choice." Keisha's face crumpled. Judge Watkins turned to Marcus. "Mr. Thompson, you have demonstrated extraordinary dedication to your daughter. Every medical professional who has worked with Jasmine speaks highly of your commitment and your competence as a caregiver. The psychological evaluation confirms that Jasmine has a secure attachment to you, and that disrupting this attachment would cause her significant harm." She paused. The question of Mr. Thompson's living arrangements has been raised by opposing counsel. It is true that Mr. Thompson currently resides in the home of Ms. Victoria Sterling, and that this arrangement provides him with resources he would not otherwise have. However, I do not find this arrangement to be inherently unstable. Ms. Sterling has testified under oath that she intends to make this arrangement permanent, and she has filed papers indicating her intention to legally adopt Jasmine as her own daughter. Victoria's breath caught. Patricia had filed those papers just 2 days ago, hoping the judge would consider them. Furthermore, Judge Watkins continued, "I am persuaded that the bond between Mr. Thompson and Jasmine is the most important factor in this case. Material resources can be acquired. Bonds of love and trust cannot be manufactured. They are built through years of consistent presence and care, exactly what Mr. Thompson has provided." She straightened in her chair. "It is the ruling of this court that the petition for modification of custody is denied. Full custody of Jasmine Marie Thompson shall remain with her father, Marcus Darnell Thompson. Ms. Williams may petition for visitation rights at a future date, subject to the recommendation of a family therapist and the approval of this court." She banged her gavel. "Court is adjourned." The world stopped. Victoria heard Patricia say something. Beside her felt Marcus's hand spasm in hers, saw Keisha's team gathering their papers. But none of it seemed real. Then Marcus turned to her, and she saw tears streaming down his face. "We won," he whispered. "We won." Victoria pulled him into her arms, holding him as 5 years of fear and struggle and desperate hope finally broke free. "You won," she said. "You did this. You never gave up." Around them, the courtroom emptied. Patricia shook their hands and promised to file the final paperwork. Keisha left without looking at them, her husband's arm around her shoulders. But Victoria barely noticed any of it. All she could see was Marcus, this man who had come into her life as a janitor and become something so much more. "Let's go home," she said. Marcus smiled through his tears. "Yeah, let's go home." The drive back to Bellevue Hills felt different than any drive Victoria had ever taken. The sun was setting over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcus sat beside her in the passenger seat, his hand resting on her knee. Neither of them spoke, but the silence was comfortable now. Full. When they pulled up to the mansion, Jennifer was waiting on the front steps with all 3 girls. Lily and Rose were in their wheelchairs, positioned on either side of Jasmine. As the car stopped, Victoria saw something that made her heart skip. The 3 girls were holding hands. Lily's small fingers were wrapped around Jasmine's left hand. Rose's were wrapped around her right. 3 children who had spent their lives in isolation finally connected. Marcus got out of the car and walked toward them. Victoria watched as he knelt in front of Jasmine's wheelchair, taking his daughter's face in his hands. "We did it, baby girl," he said, his voice thick. "We're staying together. Forever." Jasmine made a sound, that familiar vocalization that Marcus had learned to interpret over 5 years of listening. But this time, there was something different about it. "Da. Da." Marcus froze. "What did you say?" Jasmine's lips moved again, struggling to form the word she had been practicing in secret, the word she had heard Lily and Rose say to Victoria. "Daddy." Marcus broke down completely. He pulled Jasmine into his arms wheelchair, and all holding her against his chest as sobs racked his body. "That's right, baby girl. Daddy. I'm your daddy, and I'm never going anywhere." Victoria walked up the steps to join them. Jennifer was crying. The nurses who had gathered in the doorway were crying. Even Dr. Patterson, who had stopped by to check on the girls, was wiping his eyes. But Victoria only had eyes for her family. She knelt down beside Marcus and Jasmine, then reached out to take Lily's and Rose's hands. "I want to say something," she said, her voice steady, despite the tears on her cheeks. "I want to say it now while we're all together." She looked at Marcus, then at each of the three girls. 6 months ago, I was a ghost. I was living in this house, running my company, going through the motions, but I wasn't really alive. I had forgotten how to love. I had forgotten how to hope. I had forgotten what it meant to be part of a family. She squeezed Lily's hand. Then Marcus came into our lives. He didn't come with money or resources or fancy credentials. He came with something more valuable than all of those things combined. He came with love. Patient, stubborn, unconditional love. She turned to Marcus. "You taught me how to see my daughters again. You taught me how to be present, how to show up, how to keep believing even when everything seemed hopeless. You gave me back my family." Marcus reached out and took her hand. "You gave me a family too," he said. "You gave Jasmine sisters. You gave me a home. You gave us a future." Victoria smiled through her tears. "Then let's make it official." She pulled a small box from her pocket, the box she had hidden there that morning before they left for court. Marcus's eyes widened. "Victoria, I know this is backward. I know I'm supposed to wait for you to ask. But I've spent too much of my life waiting for things to happen. I'm done waiting." She opened the box, revealing a simple gold band. "Marcus Thompson, will you marry me?" The question hung in the air. Jennifer gasped. The nurses started whispering. Dr. Patterson's jaw dropped. But Marcus just looked at Victoria with those deep, steady eyes that had seen her through the worst moments of her life. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I will marry you." Victoria slid the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly. And then Marcus was kissing her right there on the front steps of the mansion, surrounded by their daughters and their staff and the fading light of a Georgia sunset. When they finally pulled apart, Lily made a sound. "Ma, Ma." Victoria laughed, tears still streaming down her face. "Yes, sweetheart, Mama's here." Rose joined in. "Ma, Ma." And then Jasmine, the little girl who had brought them all together, added her voice to the chorus. "Ma, Ma." Victoria looked at Marcus, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "I think they approve," she said. "I think they do." 1 year later, Victoria stood in the garden where David's roses still bloomed. The wedding was small, just family and close friends gathered under a white tent on a perfect October afternoon. Marcus wore a new suit, charcoal gray, like the one he'd worn to court, but this one fit perfectly. Victoria wore a simple ivory dress, no train, no veil. She had never been one for elaborate ceremonies. The girls were there, of course. All three of them in matching lavender dresses that Jennifer had spent weeks selecting. They couldn't walk down the aisle, but they were positioned at the front, right where they belonged. The minister spoke the traditional words. Victoria and Marcus exchanged vows they had written themselves. And when the minister asked if anyone objected, the only sound was Rose making her happy humming noise. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Marcus kissed Victoria, and the small crowd erupted in applause. But the moment Victoria would remember forever came later, after the ceremony, after the dinner, after the toasts, and the cake, and the first dance. It was evening, and the guests had gone home. Victoria and Marcus sat on the porch, watching the stars come out over the gardens. The girls were asleep inside, exhausted from the excitement of the day. "Can I tell you something?" Marcus asked. "Anything. When I took that job at your house, I was at the lowest point of my life. I was working double shifts just to pay rent. Jasmine needed therapies I couldn't afford. I was starting to wonder if maybe everyone was right. Maybe I couldn't do this alone." He took Victoria's hand. "And then I met Lily and Rose. And I saw something in them that reminded me of Jasmine. That spark. That fight. That determination to connect even when everything was working against them. And you helped them find their voices." "No," Marcus shook his head. They had their voices all along. They just needed someone to listen. Victoria leaned her head against his shoulder. I was so lost when you came into my life. I had given up on being a real mother. I had given up on being happy. I had given up on everything except work and survival. And now, Victoria smiled. Now I have a husband who loves me, 3 daughters who are thriving, a home that's actually full of life instead of just expensive furniture. She turned to look at him. You saved us, Marcus. All of us. We saved each other. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the crickets and the distant hum of the city. What do you think David would say? Marcus asked. About all of this. Victoria thought about her first husband, his laugh, his kindness, his unwavering belief that love could overcome anything. I think he would say that miracles are real. They just don't always look the way we expect them to. Yeah, Marcus squeezed her hand. I think he'd be right. Inside the house, one of the girls made a sound. Victoria couldn't tell which one she had learned that it didn't matter. They were all her daughters now. All 3 of them. Should we go check on them? Marcus asked. In a minute. I just want to stay here a little longer. They sat together under the stars, 2 people who had found each other against all odds. 2 wounded souls who had learned to heal together. 2 parents who had discovered that love wasn't about fixing what was broken, it was about showing up day after day and refusing to give up. Victoria thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The grief, the loneliness, the fear, the small miracles that had slowly, steadily rebuilt her faith in the possibility of happiness, and she realized something she had never understood before. Family wasn't about blood. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about perfect health or perfect circumstances or perfect anything. Family was about love. Patient, stubborn, unconditional love. The kind of love that showed up when things were hard. The kind of love that never stopped believing. Marcus had taught her that. Her daughters had taught her that. Even David from beyond the grave had taught her that. And now finally she understood. I love you, she said to Marcus. I love you too. They rose and walked inside together, toward the sound of their daughters, toward the life they had built, toward a future that neither of them could have imagined, but both of them deserved. The mansion that had been silent for so many years was finally full of voices. And Victoria Sterling Thompson knew with absolute certainty that she would never run from love again.